Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 5 of the TURD Podcast, also known as the Trail Ultrarunning Race Directors Podcast. I'm your host, Shalini Bhajjan, and today I'm excited to welcome Noah Dougherty, the Director of Events for Aravaipa Running and the Race Director for Mogollon Monster 100, one of the most challenging 100-mile events in southwestern United States. So let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Noah.
Thank you. Yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you for making time to chat with me. So I like to start with, who is Noah Dougherty?
Sure. Yeah. I live out in Arizona, Phoenix area, and I moved here from Vermont. I grew up in Vermont till I was about 20, and kind of southwestern Vermont on the New York border, and then moved out here when I was 20 with my brother, who was already out here, and kind of just built a life in the Phoenix area. I have a wife and 3 kids, so we're right in the thick of raising families and working for Aravaipa.
Sure. So how old are the kids? And boys, girls?
Yeah, 2 girls and a boy. Riley's my oldest, 15, 13, Quinn, and then, 12.
Sure.
Quinn, 10 for Jack. So 15, 12, and 10. So it's pretty busy.
You'll be getting out of the thick there soon enough.
We're like professional chauffeurs kind of right now, you know?
Right. I was going to say.
Theater and
once they start driving, life gets a lot easier. I've got 3 of my own, so it's,
nice.
And they're all driving.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, my oldest is 15, so she started driving, so that's kind of like relief, but it's she loves it, so it's fun.
So you said you're in the Phoenix area. Are you in downtown? Where exactly are you located centrally in terms of races?
So downtown Phoenix, like 15 minutes north of there. If you're familiar with the area, I basically live off the 51 highway and right next to the Phoenix Mountain Preserve, which is a pretty good little trail system right in the center of kind of eastern Phoenix. We're near the border of Scottsdale. So about 15 minutes from downtown, 20 minutes from the airport. And our office for Aravaipa is like just below the airport.
Yeah. So you said you moved to Arizona when you were in your 20s. Did you go to school like most of your childhood, and school was in the Northeast then, I'm assuming, or?
Yeah. I mean, I graduated. It's kind of a unique story. I grew up in this town called West Rupert, Vermont, and it's very, very small. And we had a 2-room schoolhouse small. So until I was 7th grade, we were in just a little 2-room schoolhouse. And then our town was so small that we actually got a high school education in New York. So we would cross the border every day, went to school there, played sports in upstate New York. So then I went to school for a year in New York, played baseball at this community college up there. And then I moved out west and continued to go to school here. And ended up getting my degree from Northern Arizona University, which is in Flagstaff.
Gotcha. Siblings, I guess. Just your brother, or do you have any other siblings and family?
Yeah, we're the middle. Yeah, Jeremy is my older brother. He's the one that pretty much started Mogollon, and then we ran it throughout. And then, I have an older sister, Jennifer, and then my brother, Jeremy, and then a younger sister, Alyssa. And both sisters are in Florida now. They've kind of just migrated there in the last 6 months, kind of separately, but both found themselves in the western Florida area.
Okay. And you went to school in Arizona. What was your major? What did you study and realize job at the time?
Parks and Recreation Management.
Oh, shoot.
I'm kind of maybe using it, in a way.
Sure.
So I did some cool internships with the City of Phoenix Parks Department. I did the athletic department when I was going to a Scottsdale Community College, which was a really cool few months. And then I worked in hotels for a long time. Sure. So we were working in some nice hotels in town as kind of every department. And then slowly found my way to race directing and working with Aravaipa.
Gotcha. And I'm assuming you met your wife while in Arizona?
Yeah, we met pretty quickly. I think I moved here in 2004. We met the fall of 2004. Janine, and she actually moved here from the Northeast earlier that year separately. Sure. Her parents retired to Arizona, which from New York is pretty uncommon. I guess a lot of them go straight down to Florida. But yeah, and we just met. We ended up working at the same hotel. And then we've been together for a long time.
Sure. So talk to me a little bit about, with your, I guess your college degree and then transitioning into real life job, and how long was that period where you had a real world job
Not working.
prior to race directing.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to school probably like 4 to '09 with like, maybe not always full time, but I got my
Sure.
degree in like the winter of '09. And during that time, pretty much exclusively working in hotels. So I worked in like catering and banquets for years. And then I started running a valet operation at this hotel in Scottsdale and did that for really till like probably through 2016. So that's probably close to 15 years, 12
Sure.
years. I worked in hospitality, doing different things. And it's a super fun job. A lot of cool people work in the industry, and you get to do some cool things, and it's a cool town to be in, to work in it. But eventually I was like, okay, we started having kids, and it was kind of a pain. Gone,
Schedule.
I always say it's like the most flexible, inflexible job because
Sure.
you can week to week set your own schedule, but like it's hard to plan anything 3 months out because you don't know when there's going to be a huge event that they need you to work. So it's like I could work a night shift instead of a day shift the next week, but if I needed to like plan 3 months out, it was always like, wow, we got to see.
Sure.
So it started to like really wear on me, and this opportunity kind of came about, and I was like, well, let's see where this goes. I never thought race directing would be an official job.
Time
But
job. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. With that, let's go into your running background. What kind of got you into running? When were you running, racing, and how that sort of your athletic career has been up until this point?
yeah. Also interesting. We were never runners, like me, my brother, my wife, never, but we were always loved outdoors. We're always big hikers, and we'd go biking out in the woods in Vermont and stuff. But I was always played sports, like team sports, baseball, football, and kind of loved that. And then we got to a point probably when I was like in my late 20s, we were still playing baseball, different leagues and stuff. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, we can't always do this. And then I just kind of vividly remember my brother. It was like the winter. He was dating this woman who is now his wife, Jen. And he's like, hey, I'm going to Alabama and I'm going to go
Sure.
run this mountain mist 50K, which is a pretty big 50K down in like I think it's northern Alabama. And I was like, 50K? You can't do that. That's insane, dude. Crazy. And he was like so mad at me. He's like, what are you talking? You're always such a negative, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to go do it. And then sure enough, he did it and had like the time of his life. It was like a muddy slop fest, and he was running through the woods and just like tons of fun. And then we signed up that was like 2010. So that was probably when the first race I ever ran actually was in Mesquite Canyon, which is an Aravaipa race
Sure.
here in Grass Valley. I think it was a 30K or 25K at the time. So we started running then, and then I think the first ultra might have been that same year. It was this fat ass or whatever you call it in Flagstaff that Jamil was hosting with his brother Nick, and Flagstaff 50K or something it was called. But so
Sure.
that was really fun. So it was about 2010, and then kind of progressed from there. Took a few years to finally take on 100, but we did it.
So what was your first 100 and what year was that?
My first 100 was Mogollon, actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. My brother had just moved to Maine, and he flew back, and we ran the whole thing together. So it was
Gotcha.
kind of like a really cool full circle. We had directed it from 2012 to 2016, and then after 2015, Emil took it over with Aravaipa, still
Sure.
not working with him or anything. And then in 2017, I started working for Aravaipa, but I was like, hey, if I ever have a chance to run it, this is it. Let me
Sure.
try to run it. So we ran the entire 100 miles together. It was really cool. So that was my first 100 in 2017.
Yeah. And I know you're still actively racing here and there, not as consistent. Is that primarily due to work, kids, what do you think running is?
That's a good question.
Per-
I think about it often. Yeah, like the racing has definitely died off, and I can easily use the excuse of like, oh, I'm really busy. But when I was racing and training and running hundreds, I also had like 3 toddlers. So it's like, I don't know if that's like the best excuse. Maybe it's just an excuse that I use, but I'm hoping to get something. I just need to sign up for something, and then that's
Sure.
that's how I work. It's like, okay, if I'm on the hook for the $200 and training, I don't want to suffer through it. So I'm going to make myself train. So kind of eyeing maybe Zane Grey again. I haven't run that in a few years.
Yeah. So would there be like an ultimate race that you're like, ideally, if I were to go out, this would be the race I would love to run.
I mean, I would love to run Hard Rock.
Yeah,
That's for sure. I think the San Juans are probably one of the most beautiful places in the country.
sure.
So that would be definitely a bucket list 100. I think, the Hurt has always been kind of a interesting
Sure.
January 100 because it's on Hawaii. I know it's like kind of a loop course, but yeah, I mean, Hard Rock for sure. I got to run UTMB, so
Sure.
I mean, I would rather go back and like hike that now during the day, see more of it in the sun. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's some races in Europe that look pretty spectacular. Like some of those sky races look pretty experience. Yeah, that'd probably be
Okay.
the one. If I could run Hard Rock, that would be good. But I gotta get qualifiers and
Sure, it's a whole other can of worms. Yep, I'm there with you. I'm in the cycle of what's next for a qualifier.
Yeah. Because you haven't run Hard Rock, right? I think I saw you ran Western.
Yeah, I did. I did run Western. Hard Rock, no. I've been on the lottery for like 9 years now, so we'll see. But yeah, it's kind of a vicious cycle, I'm sure you know, where you just get caught and then it's like, oh, this is taking, I don't want to do it. And then it's like, shit, I've got 9 years now. So,
That is kind of crazy. Yeah, you would think, well, I mean, the Hard Rock lottery is kind of wild, I think, but
yeah.
a lot of people that seem to keep getting back in, it's like, can we get some newbies in here?
Yeah, man, that's a whole other topic of discussion, how lotteries need to be handled. But so with, your running, I would like to first talk about Mogollon. Having run the race, I have to tell everybody Arizona and especially the Mogollon Rim has some of the best sunsets. I mean, it is just incredibly beautiful. Everything I've run out there is. And so let's talk about Mogollon, and then we can dive into your role as director of events for Aravaipa and what that involves. So I know you had mentioned you are currently race directing 2 events for Aravaipa, Mogollon and the Desert Solstice Track Invitational. So let's start with Mogollon first, how the race came about, talk to me a little bit about the course.
Yeah.
And then we'll roll into the Desert Solstice.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Mogollon was, so like I mentioned, we started running around 2010. And then it was either that summer or maybe 2011, but we started going up on the Mogollon Rim to do some training runs. And there's a cabin loop, which you got to run probably at night, unfortunately, because I think 2021 was the first year of our point-to-point, right? Did you run point-to-point?
I ran the point-to-point, yeah.
So that's like once you hit Myrtle, you go up and through the pine trees and stuff, the next 18 miles, all the cabin loop. But there's a section that currently is not being used. It's called Houston Brothers. And then you come down Fred Hot after hitting Pincho Cabin. And I just remember we had not seen anything like this in Arizona. Coming from the Northeast where everything's green and lush and rivers and stuff. And, I think that's why we love this race so much, because people who are completely unfamiliar with Arizona think of Arizona as swirl cactus and snakes and stuff like that. Sure. And then up there, and there's little streams and springs, and there's these 80-foot tall ponderosa pines, and then these ferns that are up to your neck. And we just thought it was like the coolest thing. We're like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And it was like a perfect 25-mile loop that we do. So that kind of got the wheels turning. And at the time, if you think back to 2010, 2014, like in between those 4 years, like a lot of hundreds were like the trajectory of races was kind of exponentially growing. And
right.
That was kind of it. It was like, let's try to put one on here. So that started probably, 2011. There was like training runs that we were doing and trying to nail down the course. And this local runner, Jeff Jones, really helped a lot with that. He was kind of knew a lot of the like, here's how you would connect these trails and roads and stuff. So, and then in 2012, we held it for the first time, and it was a completely different style race, if you will. A lot of the same trails are still used today, but it was kind of a series of 25, 30-mile loops, if you will. Kind of, it's hard to explain necessarily, but you started and finished in the town of Pine rather than now you start 45 miles east and finish point to point in the town of Pines. Sure. Different climbs, different, some different trails, but that's kind of how it came about back in 2012. And it was, I think we started maybe, it was either 15 or 24 people.
I was going to say, what was the turnout like?
And yeah, it was it was a hell of a learning experience.
So for how many years was the course then, the original course stuck before it became a point-to-point?
Yeah, this race has been pretty wild too. The rim is such a, brutal ground, I guess. We've had to change the course probably in, what would that be, 13 years, probably like 7 or 8 times we've had to adjust it in some regard because of fires, closures, or logging, or flooding, something. So we ran that course 2012 to 2016. 2017, we started to have a couple like pretty big reroutes because of flooding. And then the new point-to-point started in 2021. So we actually were able to run the point-to-point 3 years in a row before we had to make a slight change due to some stuff going on up there. So 2021 was when we switched from the start and finish in Pine to a point-to-point situation.
And you had mentioned your brother Jeremy, and you were, I guess he was the one involved with laying out the course, and you guys kind of, came together for that. So is he still involved, or how many years did you kind of partner up and host Mogollon before it went to Aravaipa, under the Aravaipa umbrella?
He is not currently involved. He was 2012 through 20, he did it. Okay. And then similar thing, he works in hotels as well. He still does. He's a general manager, and actually he's like something above that now, whatever I'm not sure his exact title, but he lives in Maine. So he oversees, 8 or 9 properties now. So at the time in 2015, it was just a lot. I mean, as you know, race directing through labor of love, and it can be really stressful. He had 2 little kids. I had 3 little kids. We had just had our third in 2015. It was like we can't put enough energy into this race to make it as great as it should be, and we need help. And really, that's how Jamil reached out to Jeremy, and he's like, because Jamil ran the original Mogollon and won it, and Jamil loves the heritage races, and he's big proponent in hey, we have to keep the history alive and make sure it's preserved and stuff, which is really cool. So he reached out and he's like, you can't kill this race. He goes, I'll take it over. Yeah. He's like, you can do whatever you need to do to help and stay involved. He goes, but I'll take care of a lot of this, the tiresome logistics, if you will, go with hosting a race. That was the year. Jeremy's last year was 2016. He left in 2017 for Maine with his family. He's still super active and running, and he's come back and run the other distances since, but as far as directing or being involved at all, he's got his own.
Talk to me a little bit about, we'll dive into permits and trail work and all that and after this, but for anybody that's listening and is not familiar with the terrain, I should say it's gnarly, but it is beautiful. So talk to me about the rim itself and where the course currently is and how that flows, because I know it goes up and down, but 6 times, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it's a really interesting area. The Mogollon Rim technically runs, I think, 200 miles, kind of east to west, central Arizona. It's really pronounced in the area where we are, which is just east of Payson and kind of goes past Pine, Arizona, which is about 90 miles northeast of Phoenix, Scottsdale area. But it really is just like an escarpment. So it's a pretty straight drop a lot of times. It's very pronounced, and it's actually the highest point is on the edge of the rim. Farther away from the rim on top you get, the lower the elevation goes. Not dramatically, but it kind of slowly dips back down. And the difference from the bottom of the rim to the top is somewhere in say 5,500 feet to 7,500 feet. It goes up to close to 8,000, but it never hits 8,000. So it's not super high elevation. It's not super low. It's very exposed in points. As you mentioned, it's technical. It's an interesting thing. There's actually not this absurd amount of climbing in the race. And every year I always get nervous because the course has there's been a lot of trail work done, and it's become pretty nice in a lot of places that used to be super gnarly and a real pain in the butt to navigate. Every year I'm oh man, we got strong runners here. Is this going to become too easy for a hard rock qualifier? Or now we're going to have a bunch of 24s and stuff, and it hasn't happened yet. So
I'm going to quote Jeff Browning. The year I ran it, he won the race, and I think that might still stand as the course record. It was 20 hours, and I remember just having a quick exchange with him, and his exact words after running Mogollon was, I was cooked. So, but so let's talk about I guess just how many miles it is precisely, and then, of course, the vert. And then give people a little insight into how deceptive that is compared to the raw course itself and why.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the question mark every year is, as we plan for it, and we're big in, as people sign up, we have a qualifier for this race, which I don't think a single other Aravaipa race we have has a qualifier. So other races were pretty like come one, come all. And we consider getting rid of it here. And it's just the remoteness of some of the areas that people could get in trouble just makes us nervous. So it's like you have to have at least a 50-mile qualifier or some sort of adventure that shows me I know what to do after 10, 12, 14, 16 hours when my body is like, dude, I'm hurting, But the course, it's so interesting because, like you mentioned, I think the verts, fluctuates, say 15,000,
Right.
Somewhere around there, like nothing crazy. Mileage comes out to just about 102, 103. We make you run, you finish at mile 100 almost exactly at this trailhead where you could easily stop, and we're like,
Sure.
Well, you're going to finish in town. And
Yeah.
so it's just over that. I think it's around 102, about 15,000 feet of climbing. Like you mentioned, there's 6 climbs and 4 of them are in the first 45 miles.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. They're steep, they're rugged, some of them are exposed, some of them are tucked in the trees, but they're just steep. And I think people get to the 50K mark and they're like, oh my gosh, I gotta still have to do 70 miles here. And it's one of those races. If you go, people go do this all the time because it's close enough where you can drive up on the weekend. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a 20-mile section. I'm going to do a 25-mile section. And they do it, and they're always like, actually, that was easier than I expected. I heard so much about this course.
Right.
I thought it was going to kick my butt, and I did it, and it was fine. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. If you do it in 20-mile sections, it's when you do that 20-mile, and then it's like, okay, now I'm going to tack on the next 20-mile,
Right.
which still has similar terrain, and then another one. And then there's long gaps between aid stations. I think at least 3 stretches over 10 to 12 miles, which, a 100-miler, you get behind because you're just beating your body down.
Yeah.
I think it's all of those things. We've had some pretty wacky weather the last few years, hailstorms, crazy lightning, flooding, stuff like that. So it's just all these little things that seem to add up. When you're climbing at mile, 95, you're climbing 2,000 feet and it's fully exposed on day 2. And just all those little things that seem to add up, and we can't ever like fully pinpoint exactly what makes this so difficult for people.
Sure.
That's the best guess I have towards them.
From my experience, I thought like the first 40 miles were loaded. It was just like never ending, and then it kind of eases off a little bit, and then towards the end, it kind of hits you again. So that definitely, I think that combination of how it flows definitely kills your legs and brain.
Yeah, that's what we say. It's like if you can get through the first 45, like climb up Myrtle, which is the 4th climb.
Yeah.
And usually it's around sunset, and it's like if you can get up there, the next 18 miles are super runnable, like less stress on your brain because it's not as technical.
Right.
There's no sun, it just makes it easier. So it's like just work through this mileage and then deal with where you're at in the next 20, and then you check your situation.
Yeah. So I would like to also talk about, because the year I ran it, I think it was like 21, a heavy crew supported event. 8 stations, like you said, are pretty far out, sparse. And I think that also makes it challenging, especially for a lot of the solo runners. Although every time I popped out onto a crew supported aid station, people were just like, hey, what do you need? So that was pretty amazing because I was getting handed out food and whatever I needed. And my crew was like a mile and a half down the strip of cars. So if people wanted to run it, that component, I think, plays a huge part. And as remote as it is. So talk about that, and why is that like that? Can you not get aid in certain places, or is it more just like, hey, this is a challenging event and this is how we're going to keep it, and limited or minimal support?
We talked about this, and actually the year that you ran it, what you're mentioning, I think, is the 2 crew only zones, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no, but if you have a crew, you can collect aid there and in one of the strips, it's about a 3 mile stretch. So the rim runs east to west, and then there's a rim road, it's called Forest Road 300, and it runs the entire length. One of the most like epic viewed road the whole way. So pretty much we keep everybody on that same road, which is on top of the rim the whole race. Because it's just so much time. Like there's a couple points in the race where it's 2 miles of trail, but an hour and 45-minute drive if you were to, because you have to go all the way around. So instead of trying to be like, well, you can see somebody at your 50K mark and then you can see them at 45, but you might not make it. Like, let's just open it up and there's just points across the top of the rim. Yeah, in the 21 22 app is called Black Mesa Crew Zone, which is like from 25 to 28 or something like that. Now it's a little different. We've adjusted it a little bit. One of the climbs you had to do, we cut out some of it to keep them higher up. And then, yeah. So anyway, now there's an aid station up there. So there's aid and then a crew zone. So it's not, there was some like maybe an equitable aspect to it that people were like, well, it kind of sucks if I don't have a crew. These people are getting an extra aid station, and we're like, well, it's either that or nobody gets anything. We feel like there's an opportunity to allow people to collect aid here. And we don't normally have aid stations or crew zones that are like that. Normally it's like do an aid and everybody parks here and everybody gets, crews and then you leave. But the rim is just not set up with parking lots. Every trailhead is, hey, you can fit 3 cars here. You can, and then you're lining roads, which aren't made for lining with cars, so this gave us an opportunity. There's a lot of pull-offs and a lot of dispersed camping and stuff like that. So that's why we had those crew zones there. There is still one later on in the race at General Springs Cabin that is still crew zone, but then 1.8 miles straight down the mountain there's another aid, so it's not too bad. But the idea was get up on the rim, spend the entire day up there, and you're following your runner west as they're running west, and then you have time to just hang out on the rim. And if you want to go hiking, go hiking. If you want to, do whatever, there's lakes up there that you could go visit if they're, out there for a long time. And you just continue west on the rim road and then you drop down right into Pine, which is where they're finishing. So that was kind of the main driver on that, was it kind of flows well with the runners. And then they're not going to miss a lot. They're not going to see maybe as many as some races, but this is probably the best, compromise we could come up with.
Gotcha. So how many miles of the race is truly on the rim?
On the rim?
Yeah.
On top of the rim, I would guess 18, 24, probably close to 30 on top.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another, probably, maybe, 30-ish on top. And then a bunch below. And then, all the climbs is another 10 or 12 probably.
Yeah. So this year, the race, actually, I guess next year, 26 races, both Hard Rock and Western qualifier. Congrats on that.
Yeah, that's exciting. This is our biggest race this past year. So it was the first time we'd ever had 200 entrants, and it's pretty cool, kind of gaining traction that we think it should have.
Yeah. Let's talk now about permits, because I know there's like a couple miles when you pop out of the trail towards the finish, you're running on the road through town and then you finish in town. What, are you just getting permits from one authority, or do you have a couple different permitting? And then what's it like to run the race through town?
Yeah, there's 3 national forests that the race runs through. So it's all the way to the east is Apache Sitgreaves, which is kind of goes more eastern. And then the bottom of the rim is Tonto National Forest. And then the top of the rim, every time you go in and out of those two, it's Coconino on top and then Tonto on the bottom. So there's 3 national forest permits. And then we just deal with the town kind of it's a very small town, as you know. We rent out the town community center and they're in like a neighborhood road for about 1.5 miles there. So mostly the biggest permitting is just getting the national forest.
And do your permits run annually, or are you able to get like a 5-year permit?
It's interesting. We don't have a multi-year, but we do have a combined permit. So I submit all the information for all 3 forests into one permit. And then I usually deal with Tonto people, and they're kind of the point person. And then they, if I have questions specific to like, hey, we wanted to use this trail instead of this trail, can I do that? I'll reach out to them directly.
Yeah.
That's
and briefly touch on trail maintenance, because, given how remote and how not so easily accessible as some of the sections are. What does, and point to point, what does your trail maintenance and trail work, and how far out do you guys start planning for the race before the event date?
Yeah, so the trail work thing has been interesting up there. There's trails that I'm pretty convinced we're like the only ones that use them throughout the year. So
Yeah.
we really kind of honed in on like the Myrtle Trail, for example, used to be just really, really difficult to follow, and most people are doing it at night. So every year we spend a lot of time on that, and I feel like it's gotten to a point of where most people you can follow it without even markers. Yeah. But we try to do at least 2 trail work days in the summer. We have 2 or 3 training runs, and then if we can, we'll like piggyback it with a trail work day, because what I've noticed too is I'll get 30 people at the training run and then 2 people at the trail work day. You know, I don't know if you noticed this, because I don't think I had it in 2021, but there's a service requirement now.
Yeah, and also, that's excellent.
Which I know it creates it's like a barrier of entry almost for some people, where they're like, I don't want to deal with that. You know what I mean? When we're up there for like 2 days moving rocks and cutting manzanita back and weed whacking and everything else, it's like, anybody helping is going to be helpful. And we know a lot of people aren't in Arizona doing this, but you need help, and every race director around the country and every national forest especially needs help. There's just no way they can keep up with what it requires. So there's a really great group of people up there in the Rim country, as they call it, and they do a lot of, small trail work around stuff like Promontory Point, which is that pretty nasty descent you did around 20, like very steep. You did a ton of work on that, because that was super difficult, and it's still sketchy, but at least you can follow the trail. And then there's the Highline Trail, which is a national historic trail that runs 50 miles. That's what Zane Grey Ultra Run is on, or Endurance Run.
Yeah.
They just spent a lot of money redoing that entire trail. So what used to be about a 50-mile trail is now like 64 miles. Sure. But if they, for better or worse, we're not quite sure yet, but it's, instead of like going up and over these hills, now it kind of zigzags around them to try to keep erosion back. I didn't know this, but I think they say like with trail building, most grades should be like 6%.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, it's not steep at all. So in order to keep that on a hill, you have to kind of wind your way around.
Yeah.
Gained a lot of miles, got rid of a lot of rocks. Jamil and I always kind of joke around. We're like, we want asterisks next to our finishes from like the 10, 20 years ago. It's a different trail.
I have to say, going back to the trail work requirement, I think that like events that can afford to do that in terms of like, hey, we have guaranteed numbers and decent following, I think everybody should incorporate that. I did my first trail work in 2015, I believe, because I needed hours for Western states. And I have been doing trail work, trail building ever since. I think people don't understand how much effort goes into maintaining those trails. And as you said, that descent, I still remember just losing rocks underneath my foot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That especially.
Yeah. So, I think that just that trail work, trail build is if you run trails, you have to know how to do that or be a part of that community. Quickly, tell me what distances Mogollon has currently. And, are you going to keep the course the same for 26? Any changes going into next year for you?
Yeah, we currently run 2 distances. So it's the 100-mile distance, which runs on Saturday morning. And then on Sunday morning, we start a 42K, which is a marathon. They do basically the last 26 miles of the course. They run out like 2.5 miles to connect with the 100-milers, and they run the same exact route as them through the finish.
Okay.
Kind of pump some energy into the race at the end of it. They're already 24 hours in at that time. So at the time when we put it in there, it was try to boost numbers, because it was like, we have, I think the time it was 250 was our max for the national forest. So we were like, we have room. Let's get more people out here. I think eventually I would prefer to have it all hundreds on one day, and then maybe the first day is in August or something like that. So we'll see, but it's 2 distances. Ideally, no changes. We had a big scare this past year. There was a big fire down in Washington Park area. We thought for sure the western side of the course is going to be cut out, and they did an incredible job of kind of drawing a line. Didn't have to do any reroutes down there. And then in 24, it's funny that I remember I go to Labor Day these shows in Denver, go see music every Labor Day. And what's up?
I said, sure.
Anyway,
Hobbies are good other than
yeah.
things, right?
We always go up there, my wife and I, and I remember I was like, oh, it's like no fires, no closures, anything. And I got a call when I was in Denver, and our agent or the Tonto woman's like, I hope it's nothing right now, but I just want to let you know there's a fire that started up near West Weber and da da da. And then it ended up being like we couldn't run the race. We had to completely reroute the entire race.
Yeah.
Wednesday, Thursday of race week. So people did like an entirely different 100-mile course. But ideally, 2020 point to point, no adjustments.
Okay. Before I move on to Desert Solstice, do you guys have kind of an alternative for situations like that where, if courses close, certain segments close, or is that something where it's like, okay, as the Forest Service says, hey, this section's closed, you need to reroute, that's when you start looking at it? Or do you, at this point, kind of have like alternatives where you can quickly piece it together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, and actually this summer, she's like, do you submit your reroutes? I was like, well, I need to know what's closed. And then what's closed, then I can piece it together because we know all the trails and forest roads and stuff. So that's mostly, it's like, hey, if the closure's up on top, I know how to get around it as long as they'll let us, and if it's down below, we can kind of work around there. So we kind of just have to, and then just quickly pivot.
Yeah. Before we go into Desert Solstice, let's talk about as the director of events for Aravaipa. What does that, just briefly touch on, what does that look like and how long have you been in that position? Just your general, work.
Sure. It's mostly, if you're familiar or not familiar with Aravaipa, we are quite large now. We've grown quite a bit, and we have races, I think, in 7 states now. And, most of them are not super large. But so what happened was it's just a lot for Jamil to kind of shoulder everything. And he's like, I need help. So I really just applied, and I was like, hey, I'll take this role on. And so my job essentially is I'm here to assist the race directors. I'm here to help people and make sure everything's moving along in the logistics side of things. And we have a pretty exceptional team. We have a lot of employees that are with us for years, which makes just a massive difference in planning and executing a race. So our race directors have all been here at least 2 years, 3 years. Jubilee's been here longer than me. So we're beneficial. We benefit from that. That's kind of my role. And then Colorado and New Hampshire are newer. So I spend a lot of time just trying to keep that moving forward without too many hiccups and pain points. So that's my role there.
Okay. And then as far as, really dialed into race directing, Mogollon and then Desert Solstice are the 2 events, I guess, you're pretty hands-on with, if I'm understanding that.
Yeah, it's as more races come about, I kind of offload more races, which is good. I think at one time it was like 18 a year, which is a lot. The Aaron Barber took over a bunch of races for me, and then we have Heidi Allen. She's taken over 2 more that I was doing this past year, but which is a nice thing. We have staff that we can internally kind of do that. But Desert Solstice I kind of just adopted it because the other person left a couple of years ago, and last year was the first year I officially directed it. But it's a super unique, cool event that Nick, who's Jamil's brother, helped kind of come to fruition. Maybe he did it entirely, I'm not sure. But basically, we go to a high school in Phoenix called Central High School, and it's in December every year. And the idea is we're going to give you a place and a platform to just shoot for records. We'll have everything set up for you. You come here, you get your own tent, or they share tents technically, but you get your own tables in a tent. We have food here for every lap. We time it, 30 people max. And some people will go for a 50K record. Some people will go for a 12-hour record. A lot of people are going for the U.S. national team. That's kind of a big draw, is they want to go and run 145 miles or 150 miles. And it's a sight to see. It's a really cool, it's unlike anything I've ever directed in ultra running because it's such a particular, everything to the minute. They know if they're 18 seconds behind their pace, they're like, that means in 3 hours, I'm going to be a mile behind. And then if I'm a mile behind, I need to figure out how to make up 9 seconds. It was like just an absurd thing. And they, their crew standing in one of the lanes, handing them the cups with whatever they need.
Yeah.
It's like if they like, I'll be back in a minute and a half. It's like it's a pretty hilarious. But like, I have so much respect for it now that I've kind of watched it and seen it happen. Because people they're putting it out there. Like a lot of times you don't always get that where people don't know their limits. And these people are not running. These aren't the people running to find out if they can run 100 miles. They're like, I know I can do that. I need to know how fast I can do it. How far I can go in this amount. And that's kind of a different thing.
Yeah, different athlete, different mindset. So when was that race? I guess the inception year, and how many years has it been around?
I actually don't know when it started. I would guess it's been around for 10 years.
Okay.
And they've seen some pretty impressive records. Nick Curry actually set the American record there. Sure. Camille has set some pretty unbelievable times there. Yeah. Last year we had, I think, 4 runners run over 150 miles, including Lauren, who won it. And yeah, it's cool.
You had mentioned it's invitational only. What is that process like? Is it kind of, you go through submitting a form, or do you guys kind of put it out there? Like, just touch on that a little bit for me.
Yeah, we do host it on Ultra Sign Up, but what we do is if you're interested in one of these things, you essentially register, but we set it up as a wait list. So you're not paying, you're not committed to anything. And then we review it internally. And in there it says, what is your goal? Yeah. What are you coming to Desert Solstice for? What are your accolades or PRs? Like, have you ever run a 24-hour race? And if you have, how many miles? Have you ever run 100 miles? What's your PR? Sure. And we have certain qualifying levels on there that are public that you can look at online. And we really just align that with the U.S. national team. So it's like right now, the men's is 145. I think the women's is 135. That's like, hey, this would be your A. Like if you're an A, you're pretty much going to get in, right? Like that's what we want. If this year was a U.S. Worlds, or not U.S. Worlds, but a World Championship 24-hour. So, that's obviously takes precedent over some of these local events. So you don't get always those top athletes. And sometimes you do, but so other people are like, hey, I'm going for, an age group world record or something. And if it fits into our, entry list and everything, it's like, all right, cool. Give it a shot. Yeah. Happy to take you in. But essentially they post it on there, wait list register, we review it. And then if we this would be a great fit, we send you an invite.
Gotcha. So are you drawing in a lot of international athletes as well? Or is it primarily U.S.?
It kind of varies. Currently, no. Last year we had Stephanie Gurel come and she crushed it. I think she hit 163 or some crazy number. Once in a while, I would say internationally, we get 1 to 3 athletes. It's mostly American athletes that come.
Gotcha. What's timing that event like? I'm just curious for myself. Having hosted a backyard, it's kind of a nightmare, but, it's on a track.
Backyards are tough because there's no end in sight, right?
Right.
I think the hard part is you're opening yourself up to is this 48 hours? Is this 4 days?
60 hours? Yeah.
Especially now the way people are competing in those things.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty incredible to watch. This one, we time it, luckily on a track. There's certain points, certain loops, it equals exact. So the start finish would be, say, 100K exactly. And I think a 50K exactly. And then there's other points on the thing. So 100-mile actually ends in a different point on the track. Right. And that's where it gets a little bit stressful because, you have to have 3 to 5 stopwatches on you. And we start them at the race starts. And then as somebody's approaching 100 miles, it's like, all right, grab your clocks. We're going to run with this person. And when they get to the 100-mile mark, we got to all stop it at the right time, especially if it's like, hey, this is 50 to 54, Stella Springer, I think, set the record last for us and for her, not us. So anyway, there's a little bit of stress in that. With that and making sure it's like, oh crap, don't mess this up and don't hit reset. The watchers. Yeah. Ever, right? It's like, but otherwise we time that internally. Andy, Ellie are our 2 timers. We have our own program that we use, and we use mats a lot. That's kind of our thing. I don't know if you use mats or
Yeah. I mean, the most precise, I guess, if you want, especially with records and stuff, people are like on the nose, as you said, few seconds and,
Yeah, it goes to the thousands, on the, so it's nice, yeah.
Okay. Outside of that, where do you see yourself in the future? Is this your ride or die or scum? No.
It's a pretty it's funny, the job is great. The community is incredible, right? I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes I was at Javelina last weekend, and I was helping with we do doping control for that. So I was helping as the winners came in, and
Yeah.
we have a stage we set up. Like, I don't know if you saw any of the live stream, but it's
Yeah, I did.
pretty unlike anything else that we do, or like most, or like American ultra running is like. But it's like, we're part of something pretty cool right now, and
Yeah.
it's hard sometimes when you're in the weeds to really like take a step back and look at that and be like, we're building something pretty cool, and that's a cool thing. And it feels like as we kind of grow and expand and stuff, it's a cool thing to bring more people into that sphere and like let them grow with the company. And so yeah, I mean, I don't have any plans of moving on or anything. I think we're doing something pretty cool, and it's Jamil's a visionary, so it's always fun.
So is Arizona going to be where you're going to retire, or haven't gotten that far yet?
My gut would say no. We do miss the Northeast a lot.
Yeah, I would echo that.
Yeah, it's tough with kids, in school and uprooting and stuff, and whether they're probably pretty resilient, but we're definitely, her mom lives here. And so there's some things that keep us here. But I would like to think the Northeast it's in our future at some point.
All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. And before I let you go, if you were to tell somebody why they should come visit the Southwestern Trail or run the Southwestern Trails, and what is it that you love about the trail systems?
Southwestern trails, like desert trails?
Yeah, I mean, where you are, just the general area, Arizona, because I, having raced there, I feel it's just so different from anything else I've run. I've run in the Northeast, I've been in the mountains, Midwest, but Arizona just has such a varying, like, depending on where you are. So, like, from that, what's your favorite part of that? Because you can be in the mountains and have, alpine and aspens, and then
and that's, its own draw for sure.
Yeah.
I guess, it is kind of interesting because one of the big things is you can kind of see where you're going. So a lot of times in these city parks and stuff, it's like you can go out on a training run, and as you're like running on the single track, you're like, okay, I can like see the next trail if I want to go this way or this way, and if I want to add on. And for me, I've been here forever, but if you haven't run in the desert, like if you haven't run in the Southwest, it's super cool because there's swallows and the cholla cactus and lizards running all over the place, and you could see a snake, on the side of the trail. There's a lot of things that it's completely foreign to every other part of the country, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of places where you have this, and it's more sprawling, and the mountains are different because they're exposed. There's no trees. You see everything in front of you, for better or worse. And then the actual vegetation is just very unique to here. So I think everybody should at least experience running in the desert at some point.
Yeah. If you were to recommend one event that Aravaipa hosts out in Arizona that you're like, you have to absolutely come check this out because this will give you a decent, scale of what racing out here looks like, what would that race be?
One event, my goodness.
For the full experience.
I mean, a full experience race, a great one would be Black Canyon. It's a national recreation trail. It combines like super tight single track flowy with climbing and river crossings. And we, our aid station are ranches, like Southwestern ranches. I think if you wanted that, you go from like big crowds to single track by yourself to, Western ranches. And yeah, it's a pretty cool, that's a pretty cool thing. And it's just outside of Phoenix. And it's a very cool opportunity. If we're talking, that's obviously one of our biggest races.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Noah. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for tuning into today's episode. For more information on the TURD Podcast, please visit our website at terraintrailrunners.com. That's runners with an S. Or give us a follow on the social media channels. Until next time, don't forget to thank all the folks involved with race directing, behind the scenes, and making the races happen. As race directors, we thrive on that love. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.